Joining me today to discuss industrial cybersecurity is Phil Quade, who's the CISO at Fortinet. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sid. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. Industrial cybersecurity includes, well, cybersecurity in general, industrial as well, includes a wide variety of products and services and things like that. And though I know everybody knows the name Fortinet, it might be nice if you could kind of frame how you fit into that space.
I think Fortinet's specialty or value add to the community is that it's very much optimized around what I call the fundamental elements of the cyber domain. And what I mean is that 60 or 70 years ago, when the internet was, quote, invented, it was optimized to do two things. One, connect more people and more machines that were ever imagined. And number two, connect them at speeds that were never imagined. And so if you're in the cybersecurity business, Fortinet believes that you better be optimized around those two things, being the fastest cybersecurity company out there, but importantly, also being the best connected cybersecurity company. And what I mean is that Fortinet does a really good job of producing products that work well in the cloud, in the core, and at the edge. But importantly, we make products and capabilities that integrate and connect to each other across the cloud, core, and edge. So you can do collective defense, which is stronger than individual defense.
Thank you. I do a lot of research at ARC, and one of the things we see all the time, or hear from end users, is that they're struggling to maintain their cybersecurity defenses. What do you hear from the people you talk to, in your end users and your suppliers and partners and things like that? Are you hearing similar things or seeing similar trends?
I do have the opportunity to talk to lots of different people, whether they are consumers or suppliers, and there is a common theme over the past year, and I call that theme agility. And what I mean is that there's typically three cases where they're faced. Number one is they're being asked to do more with less. Or number two, they're being asked to do different with the same, meaning keep the same budget, but do something very, very different. And the third case is where they're being told, here's a bucket of money, go spend it on some wise things. Now, that's one of the more rare cases and always the case you dream of. But in each of those three cases, you have to be agile enough to quickly surge in a certain direction or ingest a capability without disrupting your current capability. So having agility in how you bring in new capabilities into your architecture is really, really important to folks in both the OT and IT communities.
On that topic, we've been seeing a lot of reports of cyber attacks in the news lately. I mean, some of them particularly, whether it's election results or something like that. But there's a lot of cyber attacks occurring. SolarWinds is a very big one, obviously. What lessons do you think that industrial organizations can take from these types of events and what's being done and how to deal with them?
If there's something good that comes out of the sunburst, not sunburst intrusion, it's that it put forefront on people's mind the idea that our supply chains are really, really important. Now, so many people have heard that, but they didn't really see it put into practice. And of course, sunburst is a supply chain attack on software distribution. And the unfortunate thing about those typically in the OT business, businesses that rely heavily on OT, is they are indeed subject to the most severe of attacks. And what I mean is APTs, advanced persistent threats, nations that have deep pockets and deep interest against the United States and its allies, they seek to have operational effects against critical infrastructures in businesses that use OT, because it's a way to project power without resorting to ships and bombs and planes. So those who manage businesses that rely heavily on OT, have an additional burden, and that they have to be prepared to prevent, detect, and remediate against advanced persistent threats.
Another thing that we see a lot is the big thing at ARC, and actually at the event we're having, is digital transformation, and that covers a broad kind of things, just applying all kinds of technologies. And a lot of it is IoT devices, 5G, IIoT into plants, out of the plants, and so on. But one thing I hear all the time because of my role, is that there's a lot of this adoption that's being slowed down because of concerns about cybersecurity. Now, what I'm kind of wondering is what's the overall impact that these developments, these desire to make these changes is having on architectures and solutions and things like that?
This is thanks for asking this question, Sid. It's one of these areas that I get excited about when I have the opportunity to talk to folks who work in the IT and the converged IT and OT. Here's why. I call the emerging environment sci-fi, cyber physical.
Yeah, okay.
And what I mean is that the cyber domain, the core, the cloud, the edge, has been around for a while, but the edge is getting a whole lot more interesting. The edge used to be defined by desktops and laptops and tablets, maybe even mobile phones. But the edge now is just exploding with the number of devices that are instrumenting the physical domain. And what I'm talking about, of course, is IoT. Now, the good news with the OT crowd is that this is an area where there's a lot that the OT crowd can teach the IT folks. And what I mean is that the OT community has been deploying and getting data from physical-oriented sensors for decades, right, in order to manage our critical infrastructures and our critical manufacturing. And so I think there's it's a good opportunity for those traditionally in the OT-oriented business to apply some of those lessons and help teach the IT folks about how to best manage the converged IT, OT domain, converged cyber physical domains.
You know, that's a very interesting comment because generally when I talk to people, particularly if they're in an IT, have an IT business, it's the opposite. They want to tell the OT how to do things. So it's very refreshing to hear that perspective.
I truly believe that. There's a lot of good thinking that's been put into the OT community, things like consequence-based engineering that are really, I use that stuff in helping to manage my own company's cybersecurity. A lot of the lessons that I learned in working with the OT community over the decades.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, as a final question, what do you see as the future holds for cybersecurity as all of these needs develop across the enterprise and things like that? What do you see? I don't want to ask you for your 2021 predictions, but what do you see as the future? What's happening there?
Yeah, so I'm going to go out on a limb and perhaps risk my credibility with this crowd by using the magic letters AI. But give me a second to explain myself because we've been burned by talk of PowerPoint-based AI for a few years. But I truly believe that we're building the architectures today to enable AI. And here's what I mean. Earlier, I talked about the traditional cyber architectures consisting of the core. That's where we put our mid-frame computers in closets and on-prem data centers. But we realized that we could become more efficient with the use of those machines by creating private clouds and eventually public clouds. In the meantime, we had the edge out there. That's where users interface to this core and cloud capability. But as we aspired to AI, we've really lacked something that's emerging now. I call it fog computing, right? So with fog computing is a means to take the results computed in the cloud, move it securely across the core out to the edge, where it can then be quickly tailored to I call it last mile processing to achieve a result to an end user out there at the edge that truly looks like an AI result. Because at this point, what you have is the cloud providing context, the data moving securely to the point of need, and then some quick edge processing in place to make the result very, very relevant to the end consumer, be it a person or even an IoT device or a smart car. And so what I'm trying to say is that if you have a cybersecurity architecture that's optimized around those elements I talked about at the beginning, speed, low latency, and the ability to do collective defense across all parts of your architecture, what you have is an architecture that's enabled for a true AI application like I just talked about. So I really think that we're on the verge of achieving some of these PowerPoint promises of the past few years in artificial intelligence in the next year or two.
Oh, well, I agree with you. I like that too, and I agree with the idea. It resonates with me, the idea of the end-to-end type of security. That's the big change. I mean, a thing that's going to support that.
Yeah, in the physical domain, data integrity, data availability, and data privacy is so important because we're creatures of the physical domain. And if you're going to instrument my office, my car, or even my body with an IoT device, privacy of data, integrity of data is just more important than ever. So having an end-to-end architecture where you can apply security at all points of it and do collective defense, really, really important.
Okay, well, Phil, I want to thank you. This was Phil Quade, for CISO at Fortinet. I really want to thank you for talking with me today. It's been very enjoyable, very enlightening. So thank you.
It was my pleasure, Sid. Thanks for talking with me today.